want it, don't you, Georgie? Oh, of course you do. And there's cotton candy and rides and all sorts of surprises down here. And balloons, too. All colors.
Do they float?
Oh, yes. They float, Georgie. They float. And when you're down here with me, you float too!
Cinderella story.
You want answers?
We're on a mission from God.
Inconceivable! Take your sticking paws off me! I'm afraid I can't do that.
Have fun storming the castle!
Hey everybody, welcome to Story Cauldron, finding the folktales, fables, and philosophies behind your favorite Hollywood films. I'm Bobby, the movie dude.
I'm Anthony, the philosophy guy.
And I'm Garrett, and I just put a mint in my mouth.
And we are here to talk about movies. This podcast is all Tolkien's fault, because Tolkien described the idea of a story cauldron in his essay on fairy stories as this thing that we throw all of our ideas into, all of our history, all of our stories, and it gets churned up and mixed up and then ladled out by a new generation of storytellers so that stories evolve over time. And each time they're unique and different, but each time they're also pretty heavily dependent on what came before.
And today we're looking at a movie that plagued me in my childhood just from the front cover of the book/movie case. And it's about a bunch of outcasts that attempt to kill Satan to avenge one of the dumbest children in cinema history. It's It. Stephen King's movie, It.
That's where we get the loud scream and the thunderclap and everything else, right? Or maybe just the evil laugh going behind it.
Tim Curry laugh.
Oh boy.
10 out of 10.
Buckle in, folks. It's going to be a scary one.
So let's start with the movie itself.
So the film It, that is currently out from 1990, yeah. It was actually a mini-series that they compiled down into a 3-hour-long movie. And it's about 7 childhood friends that go and start to realize that, oh, there's this demonic presence, even though they have no idea what it is. So they call it It, pronunciation on the T's. And they try to destroy it, and they think they have, and surprise, surprise, they haven't.
Yeah, it's kind of the classic horror movie monster plaguing this town, plaguing these children, and then just when you think it's been defeated, you know, the hand jerks up out of the grave, or in this case, the balloon starts floating around again, and you realize that the monster has not been defeated. So, it's a long movie. Well, it's a mini-series. It's a long mini-series. It's longer than you might expect, because it's actually kind of 2 stories. It's the story about these kids when they're kids, and then 27 years later, as adults, when they have to return to their hometown to defeat the monster for good.
I thought it was 30.
30 years
Well,
later.
yeah, 30 years, something like that.
Yeah. It wasn't really a movie like we focus on usually, so it's a miniseries, but it was still nominated for some Emmys, and a lot of people have seen this. I mean, it was really popular when I was growing up.
Sure, I think a lot of people kind of think of it as a movie, even though even though it wasn't, but it's kind of taken on that. It's filtered in that category for a lot of people because it fits right in there. The monster Pennywise fits so well with other horror classic monsters like Freddy Krueger and Jason, and so I think it's a good thing for us to talk about.
Yeah, especially since ding 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 ding, the new movie.
Oh, yes.
So the new movie's coming out, and it sparked a lot of just talk in the pop culture realm. I mean, there's things that we'll talk about a little bit later, like the clown sightings and scares and stuff like that's been happening. Well, happened, I guess, a year ago or so. And then we also have the just the overall fear of clowns that is becoming more and more prominent, I feel. So maybe we should start off there. The movie's about an it that manifests itself as a clown to scare people. Why are we so scared of clowns?
Because we're intelligent, rational people. I mean, Clowns are creepy.
It's true. They're creepy, but why do we find them creepy? I mean, they're not supposed to be creepy, right? So, I mean, they have a long history, and I feel like they're not super creepy up until lately.
Debatable. If you actually look at the history of clowns, even when they first started out, it was kind of a little sketchy, you might say. The first clown that was really that is really brought up in history is Joseph Grimaldi. Grimaldi? That
okay. Sounds good to me.
Joseph Grimaldi from the late 1800s, and he was the first modern clown. And things really didn't start out on a good foot, just because when he wasn't performing as a clown, he was very depressed all the time, and like nothing just went right for him. And
No, wait, when you say performing, was he doing the same kind of things that we think of as clowns today?
I think it's
flopping around and
just kind
very
of doing
physical comedy.
acrobatic type things. A lot like you would see a jester in like a medieval movie or
Right,
something,
I mean,
jumping around.
Well, that's
hopping
where they
around,
came
going,
from. It started out in like 2400 BC in Egypt. This is when they were first.
the idea of a court jester.
The idea of
Yeah.
just some sort of clown for the entertainment, and then court gesture.
Fool. The
Court
fool.
jester, not gesture. Excuse me.
But this Joseph guy, did he do like the face paint?
Yep,
and,
he was the first one that.
They have the big
had
red
face.
nose.
Yep. Face
Was,
paint.
was it a prosthetic or did he just like drink
I think
all
he
the
just
time?
painted it.
Oh, okay.
Or
Or
he
he
just
was
got getting
drunk.
punched by scared people.
But he was the first one to really bring in like the bright colors and the ooh, like look at me.
Oh, kind of like goofy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like a goofy clown.
And then around the same time in the 1830s, a man by the name of Jean Gaspard de Breur, I'm white
close
trash.
enough.
He was a silent mime, and he actually didn't really help the idea of clowns being fun either. When a child was mocking him, and he hit him on the head with a stick, and the child ended up dying. So everybody was kind of like, "Ooh, that's terrifying."
That's something that would like fuel my nightmares.
You gotta hand it to him though. I mean, he didn't have to talk to do it.
That's true. Anyway,
Nonverbal communication.
and then this fear of clowns and that clowns are not necessarily fun things kind of started coming into pop culture in the late 1800s with Pagliacci, which translates to clowns, and it was about a clown that ended up killing his wife by the end of the story, and it was an opera. So I think I forgot to mention that.
There was that Seinfeld episode about it, right? That was the opera that they went to go see, and Jerry thought that the clown was stalking him or something, or George, one of them.
I know what you're talking about now.
It even shows up there in 90s sitcoms. But I think it was this is the movie that I think really ignited the modern fear of clowns. Or am I wrong in that? You think there's more?
I
Clowns
think
started to
they're-
become comic relief in circuses, and because circuses are awfully terrifying.
Oh,
in
you
the
gotta think of,
50s
like,
and 60s, they
Red
really
Skelton
became
and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, 50s
Yeah, but
and 60s.
Red Skelton's not scary.
No, he's not.
People
No.
love him.
I mean, I think they started turning it around in the 50s to where it was.
Yeah, and that's when it was like,
fun.
oh, clowns are fun and entertaining.
You get Ronald McDonald.
Yeah, until
yeah.
the 70s when John Wayne Gacy, a clown, sexually assaulted and murdered over 35 young men. Yeah. And he was executed in the
That'll put a
1990s.
black mark on your profession.
Just a bit. And then after that really kind of sparked the trend where it came in.
Gotcha.
And became something that was in pop culture that really terrified everybody even more.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that is terrifying. So yeah, okay, the clowns. They're always considered like a comedic relief or super creepy. You have your iconic clowns that are friendly, but then you have every other clown that pops up is always a little scary. And there is kind of a scary clown aspect, especially around Halloween. I would always see the It mask, and at first I didn't know what it was until I first saw the movie.
How old were you when you first saw the movie?
I thought I had saw the entire movie or miniseries. Turns out I only saw like an hour of it.
Oh, really?
So this was
third
I
of
watched it this weekend again, and I'm like, there's way more than I remember. But I remember
watch the part
watching
with
it.
the kids?
I watched the part with kids.
Okay.
That was it.
I think that's the better part.
Yeah.
I agree.
But yeah, I watched this maybe 15 years ago. I was like a freshman in high school. And yeah, definitely left an imprint on me that I was like, clowns? No.
Yeah, I had no desire to watch this movie as a kid. I still didn't really have a desire to watch this movie when I was older. I think I watched it somewhere in like college, maybe like 10 years ago, something like that. Because it's one of those movies that you kind of should see just to, I mean, if you appreciate movies, because it's one of the classic horror, parts of the canon for horror films, I think.
Oh, and the acting is just
well, yeah, that's true.
So perfect.
I'm rather. I think that the remake that's coming up soon could do, or that's coming out the week this podcast is going to drop. I think that is they've got a really good opportunity here to take this terrifying concept and
make an actually terrifying movie.
Make an even more terrifying movie. Now, I don't think we should sell this one short. I mean, we watch it now, and yeah, it is hokey. It's got some pretty corny lines. Some of the acting is, well, maybe a lot of the acting is not so believable, and the graphic, the special effects, yeah, by 2017 standards,
just not quite
not that
there.
good.
Yeah, but we are looking like 27 years ago.
That's right. I mean, we've had 3 decades of development in the field, and so I think that there's a lot of potential for this new adaptation, which is actually going to be a 2-parter. They're doing I assume it'll be the first part will be with the kids, and the second movie will be with the adults.
I gotcha.
They're going to try and scare the pants off of people.
I don't know. Listening to you guys talk about this makes me feel so young because I'm 20 and I watched this movie for the first time over the last couple of days. So
this came out when I was 2.
Yeah.
So
yeah, same here.
But still, I don't really have that reference, so I'm just well,
I just remember ICP. And
Insane Clown Posse.
Yeah, and a lot of
they're
people,
scary for a very different reason.
Yeah, it's true. We were always told, that was part of the dress code. It's okay, no killer clown stuff. No
that's
doing this
right.
and that.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really.
It was up there with gang colors, and there were lots of things in public school that you weren't allowed to wear.
The killer clown thing was okay, it's relevant for us,
and
marginally less relevant for me.
To say, why do we fear clowns? I think that clowns are on the list of things like children, like dolls, things that are supposed to be innocent, but then they aren't. I mean, as soon as they start doing things like, making creepy laughs or looking at you in an odd way. I mean, I think there is something about that, taking something that is designed to be fun and happy and sweet and innocent, like a toy or a clown, and turning it into something even just kind of spooky. It's even more spooky than a werewolf or a vampire or something that's
meant to be scary.
That's meant to be, yeah. It's like if you've got it's like you've got more of a place to fall from, and so the effect is even more creepy.
Yeah, and there was an article from about a year ago when this whole clown sighting epidemic happened by Olivia Goldhill. She wrote, "Clowns. The more that you stare at their perpetually smiling faces, the more it warps into something more sinister." And that, I think, is very terrifying. The fact that, you look at it, and on the surface, it's friendly. It's, you take the movie into account. Georgie's he's not really scared. He's also really dumb.
He's very dumb.
But he's not scared. And
he should be.
He should be. But, the more that you see Pennywise throughout the movie, the more scary he becomes. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where teeth start growing in, these, little tentacle things start popping out of the drains, and
so much blood everywhere.
So much blood.
But I think when it starts showing that stuff, that's when it gets less creepy for me. I think the creepiest parts, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, are when Pennywise is going through the sewers and you see things from his perspective, right? Those different shots where you don't actually see the monster, you see what the monster is seeing, and so your imagination is left to just kind of run wild with what the heck might be coming. That is so much worse than actually just seeing the clown. I mean, the clown is scary enough in his own right, but my imagination is even better at scaring myself. Actually, Tolkien talks about this in On Fairy Stories. He actually criticized dramatic productions of fairy tales. He specifically talks about Puss in Boots, if I remember right. And he mentioned something about Peter Pan as well, actually, about how he thought that you could portray fairy stories on a stage, but it was really hard to do it well. Something he talks a lot in the essay about is that you have to maintain the inner consistency of reality within your fairy world. You can set up whatever rules you want in your fictional universe. Magic, you can make the sun green, but you have to be consistent. I mean, if the sun is going to be green, then you have to make everything else that would affect change, and you have to make it work within the confines of the world. And he thought that was a lot harder to do on stage because unless the technical effects are good enough, you're just not going to be believing that the cat is really talking or that the monster is really real. And so I think the movie kind of demonstrates that some, especially towards the end when you've got the giant spider and you're thinking, yeah, that's kind of scary, but at the same time it kind of doesn't you can tell that it's a prop and that it's not really real, and that kind of takes you out of some of the fear.
Exactly. In fact, when Pennywise pops out of the drain of the shower, the effects, it just looks like crinkled paper, and he's all like, oh. And then we see the spider at the end, like you mentioned, and it looks like a monster out of Clash of the Titans.
Yes. Yeah, almost like claymation.
It's like claymation, and you're just kind of like, well, that's scary.
Yeah, by the time I made it to the end, I was just thinking, it's a spider? Seriously?
Really?
I just watched this entire movie for a spider? Get me a can of Raid over here.
Yeah.
Really, yeah. There were some good parts. I mean, when I forget which one of them sprays when they're kids.
Eddie. Eddie's got asthma. Yeah.
Sprays him with the battery acid, and his face starts to melt. I thought they did a good job with it. I mean, the technical effects weren't necessarily all bad, but they are definitely 30 years dated.
Yeah.
Wait, 30 years. It's coming.
Right.
It's every 30 years. That's right.
That's the way it works.
Oh my gosh,
That's why I thought it was
the people that
27,
made this movie. They're smart.
They're clever. Yeah.
The new movie, they thought about it.
That's right.
So yeah, I have a quick question. Terrifying clowns out there. We had John Wayne Gacy, but what do you think about Joker in Batman?
I mean, he's definitely fits right in the same kind of. He's coming out of the same pot of soup, out of the same story cauldron here.
The same chowder.
The same chowder, yeah. I mean, he's gone through a lot of different iterations throughout the different movies, different comic books, but he is designed, especially if you've been reading the comic books, the Batman comics in the last couple of years, they've really gone in some disturbing directions with him, like having his face cut off and stapled back on. I mean, they're getting kind of brutal.
Dear.
There was a version of the Joker that was in a storyline that ran a few years ago where the Joker was actually female. It was actually Bruce Wayne's mom. It was a very complicated. Somebody changed the past, and so Bruce Wayne's mom didn't die, and she became like the version of the Joker. And she was one of the most disturbing, terrifying. I thought she was, just really horrendously unsettling in her insanity. And I mentioned it, that's on my mind because there's a rumor that the upcoming Flash movie might have that storyline as its basis.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
So they might, if they do the Flashpoint storyline in the upcoming DCEU, then there's a really good chance that we might get a female Joker, which is really exciting to see. More terrifying killer clowns, because the Joker, he or she is just brutal. I mean, murdering people because he thinks it's funny. He doesn't need a reason. He doesn't even necessarily hate people. He just thinks it's funny and doesn't care. And so
which is extremely terrifying in its own way.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot like Pennywise in that way. You're right. I mean, Pennywise has a reason. Pennywise needs to eat, but he clearly doesn't care. I mean, a lot of the stuff that happens in this movie is him just toying with these people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kiss me, fat boy.
So I just wanted to bring that up because that's one of the biggest scary clowns in pop culture today is Joker.
Yeah.
There's a few things.
Did you guys see Suicide Squad?
No.
The latest. That's the last.
I don't watch movies.
That was the most recent version of the Joker to appear on the screen, on the movie screen at least. Jared Leto's version, and he came under some pretty heavy criticism for some of the choices, and it's not just him. I mean, the directors are involved there too. Clearly, some of that's unfair because he's trying to follow Heath Ledger and in the role, and Heath Ledger knocked it out of every park you can imagine as the Joker.
Yeah.
But there were some very strange choices trying to almost humanize the Joker and his relationship with Harley Quinn in a way that really didn't seem to work for several reasons, both from Harley's perspective, but also from what you were just saying. Like the Joker is designed to be this unwieldy force of dark chaos, just like the worst kind of killer clowns you can imagine.
Yeah.
And to try and humanize him, I think totally misses the point.
Ugh.
So, okay, here's my question for you then. This kind of movie that we're watching here, I mean, whether it's a killer clown or anything else, why do we like watching these kinds of scary movies in the first place? What is it about a horror movie that appeals to us?
I only like them when they're cheesy enough that I can dip chips in them.
So you just want to make fun of them? You want to be...
Oh, yeah. Children of the Corn 1980, the 1984 version of Children of the Corn is my jam.
Fair enough. There's a lot of
jam.
people who go to... I mean, they'll go and see movies in the theater just because they want that feeling of fear. Normally, we run from fear, right?
I'm not one of those people.
You're not one of the people to go to the movie and see it.
No. I'd rather watch a comedy.
Oh, well, same here. Yeah, me too. But
Yeah,
so
definitely.
what's the appeal, do you think?
That it's probably that adrenaline rush, the fear of the unknown type thing. There's an allure to it.
Oh, like this is it's like a movie version of exploring something?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I feel like that's one of the most basic fears is the fear of the unknown. That's where you get like the fear of the dark and so on and so forth. And it's the same thing. Like when I was little, I wouldn't go on a roller coaster. And I was like, no, that's terrifying. But then you go on it once and you're like, oh, okay, I can do roller coasters. That's nothing. Because you realize that there's really nothing there that can hurt you after you experience it. It loses its fear. But not gonna lie, that rush that you get when you first experience it is awesome. Which is why I like roller coasters.
So a horror movie is a cinematic roller coaster.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I mean, the thing for me is not so much the experience of being like the thing that I don't like. Tell me what you think about this. When I watch a horror movie, I mean, yeah, I might get scared in the moment, but the thing that really bothers me is, a few hours later or the next day or something when it's midnight and I'm walking through my house and I hear a creak outside and then all of those ideas start flooding back and I'm just convinced next thing I know, when I was a kid, and maybe when I wasn't just a kid, you would turn the light out and then run to get in your bed because you're afraid that something's gonna get you,
and then you keep your head under the covers so that you don't have to see what's going on around you.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't have your
blind.
arms or legs hanging over the side of the bed because something will crawl up and grab you and pull you under.
Exactly, yeah. That's the kind of thing that really I think is unsettling about a horror movie. And I know, especially with a movie like this one, where the monster is so benign. At least it looks so benign. A clown is supposed to be, like we were saying earlier, it's supposed to be just like a normal, friendly thing that you invite to a kid's birthday.
Yeah, he's supposed to give you like hamburgers and a toy out of a fast food box.
Yeah, you're going to be... It's almost like it's more dangerous. It's more risky that you're going to see one.
Yeah, you were just saying, it's late at night, it's dark, there's that unknown, and I think that the horror movie gives you kind of fuel of what might be in the unknown, and that's what makes them terrifying.
It gives your mind more
gives it more to. I mean, because
to work on. At
first, you don't know what's out there. You use your imagination, which is part of what happens in it. Actually, is your imagination is what creates what you're scared of, because Pennywise manifests himself differently to a couple different ones. You have Richie, who sees him as
Wolfman.
As
Wasn't
what?
it a Wolfman that he was?
Yeah, the Wolfman.
Scared of.
And then Stan, later on, you find out that he was being kind of chased by a mummy, right?
Yeah.
So
I just thought that was. I thought that was Pennywise wrapped up and covered in bandages from being beaten by the children.
Oh,
Well, I think the one that
Imaginations.
yeah.
the one that really I think is maybe the most disturbing wasn't it the girl? Was
Beverly's
it Beverly's father?
Yeah.
Like she's most afraid of her father.
Yeah, I was like sitting there and I was like, oh,
Yeah, that one's heavy.
that's just a lot to take in.
The only person that didn't really come together with it was Ben, because he's one of the first people to actually see Pennywise out of the group of the 7, and he doesn't see him as anything scary. He sees him as his father who died in Korea, and he's all like, "Hey Ben,
that's
I
right,
live
yeah.
here now.
Want a balloon?
Want a balloon?" And then he turns into the clown, right?
And he's like, what, the actual H?
Yeah, and he's like running. It's like, Dad. You know, it's not scary, but I mean, it does the job of luring him towards the entrance to the sewer, but it's not exactly scary until you see Pennywise as the clown.
Yeah, I mean, Pennywise describes fear almost like meat tenderizer, right? That he doesn't have to scare them. He just likes to because it makes them taste better when he eats them.
Yeah.
So he's...
Well, you got to think about that end goal. I mean,
it's
That's why I like using that coffee garlic rub on my ribs, man.
So, yeah, that's that idea that he's trying to just lure them in like the spider to the fly. I guess by the time you see him as a spider, it kind of makes sense because that's what he's been doing the whole movie, like a spider luring them to its lair. But
Yeah.
it is maybe a bit on the nose.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not going to lie. I thought that in the end it was going to end up being an alien. Especially after we saw the cigarette-smoking man from X-Files as one of the teachers in the school.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, aliens. Yeah. It has to happen.
Well, and this is one of the big things that the movie had to take out. I mean, because this is based on Stephen King's book, It. And I think he was involved with writing the screenplay. But originally when they made the miniseries, they wanted to do like an 8 to 10 hour miniseries. But the networks laughed at them and said, no, we're not doing that. So they condensed it down to 4 hours or 3 or 4, somewhere between 3 and 4 hours.
3 hours and 7 minutes.
Okay, so barely over 3 hours. They condensed it down a lot. This book is like 1,000 pages. Stephen King does not write small books.
Big.
And there's a lot of stuff in here that they had to take out. But in his actual book, the monster is kind of an alien, kind of something else. It's a little more complicated than that.
Called
but it feeds into Stephen King's bigger mythos. He had a really interesting way of writing his books where he writes all these different books and they're all disconnected and they're all their own stories. They're not really sequels to each other. If you just read one, you could read any of them and they don't connect. But if you pay really close attention to some of them, there are connections in the background where there are events mentioned or characters mentioned between different books that over the course of like 20 years, he tied a bunch of different books together. And then he wrote the Dark Tower series that really kind of revealed a lot of these different connections, and the characters in the Dark Tower series bounce through a bunch of different fictional worlds, and Pennywise actually makes a reappearance in the Dark Tower series as one of the big evil dark forces that are being fought against. And, we're obviously condensing a lot, but you're right. In the original book, Pennywise is not just some monster out of the earth. He is this rather horrifying, alien, otherworldly, almost like other dimensional sort of monster, where he's kind of like almost like an evil form of almost like a demon or a devil, almost like an evil sort of god.
Who has deadlights?
Who has deadlights? Yeah. So what do you think about those deadlights? I mean, what are the deadlights? Just summarize those real fast.
The spider creature's stomach that lights up when it's alive
Right.
before they rip out his entrails.
It looks kind of like it hypnotizes people. That's what I kind of got out of it.
It puts him in the catatonic state.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what happened with Audra. Got it.
Is
Yeah.
that what turns that one kid's hair white too? Was it the deadlights, or was it just the shock of seeing his friends get shoved down that tube?
I think it was the shock of seeing his friends because Mike later talks about going back 20 years after the original confrontation and to the sewers and picking up the silver earrings. He escaped, but the trip scared him so much that he started going gray on the sides of his head. But,
Gotcha.
And I think since, what was his name?
The kid whose hair turns white?
Yeah, the
Henry.
kid.
Henry
Henry.
Bowers.
Henry, he sees like his friend just get pulled through the tubes.
That is one of the more
Like,
disturbing moments.
That
of the movie.
was. I mean, it's just like a weird look on his face, just and just getting sucked through.
It's folded up like a panini.
Yeah, yeah. It was
There's
terrifying.
an image for you.
I thought that was fairly terrifying as well, just because you don't see Pennywise as a monster or anything. You just see him as light.
Yeah, he could be anything.
He could be anything, and that goes back to that whole like, ooh, once
Fear
you
of what you
reveal,
don't know.
Yeah, once you reveal the monster, it kind of loses some of its like scariness.
That was one of the things in a different movie that Steven Spielberg was very clear. Well, he had some other reasons too, but in the movie Jaws,
Oh yeah,
he was explicit that he never wanted to show the entire shark until like that one real big reveal scene. But you still don't see the entire length of the shark, because he thought, no, if you just give him little hints, little bits, and let the audience mind fill the rest in, it's going to be much more effective. Also, they couldn't afford a prop that big, but that was
well, actually, they had a prop that big. The salt water just ruined
Or
the
ruined it?
insides of the mechanical shark. So, there was different reasons that they kind of went with that.
Those deadlights, though, the Story Cauldron is going to have a few different things that those are going to hearken back to. Circling especially around one author from about 100 years ago or so, H.P. Lovecraft. That's a name that a lot of folks might recognize in connection with one of his creations in particular, the monster Cthulhu. Mm-hmm. What do you think about when you hear that name, Cthulhu?
Tentacle mouth.
I just think it sounds old.
It sounds old. Yeah. Lovecraft was he was this American writer who loved horror and kind of pulp fiction, and he wrote a bunch of short stories. I don't think he ever wrote a novel. I could be wrong about that. But he's famous for his short stories where he deals with a lot of dark psychology and monsters and people turning into monsters. And after he had been writing for a while, he had started to develop this mythos about these creatures that he called the great old ones and the elder things, which were these kinds of massive otherworldly monsters that were gigantic and strong, and they had all of these powers. And they didn't care about humans at all. To talk about, or when Lovecraft would talk about them, he would say that they would treat humans the way humans treat ants. Like, you don't hate ants. They might be inconvenient to you, and they come to your picnic or when they're in your kitchen or something like that.
Yeah.
But you're not gonna. I mean, for the most part, you don't care about them, right? You don't even notice them because you're a human. You're bigger. You've got other concerns, and that's the way that the great old ones kind of see us. They don't even really pay attention to us. But Cthulhu is one of these great old ones that Lovecraft wrote about in books like, The Call of Cthulhu was the most famous story about him. And he's this massive monster living under the ocean in a city called, I can never pronounce it right, but something like Rilea, or I'm sure that some of the listeners can send us comments correcting my pronunciation there. But he lays there dreaming until one day he shall awaken and the world shall end. But Cthulhu, yeah, he looks Lovecraft drew a little picture of him. He looks kind of like Davy Jones in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. How he's got, he's got arms and legs and a torso, but then his face is covered with all of these like octopus tentacles all over the front. Except he's again like 500 feet tall or something.
Yeah, he's
just huge.
massive.
That, Cthulhu is a little bit different. I don't think there's necessarily much of a Cthulhu influence in it, but there's a different monster, a different one of the great old ones, called Yog-Sothoth, or Yog-Sothoth, who is, you're going to read about him in books like, or in stories like The Case of Charles Dexter Ward, or really the big one is a short story called The Dunwich Horror. This is from The Lurker at the Threshold. This is Lovecraft describing Yog-Sothoth and what he looks like. He says, "Great globes of light massing toward the opening, and not alone these, but the breaking apart of the nearest globes, and the protoplasmic flesh that flowed blackly outward to join together and form that eldritch, hideous horror from outer space, that spawn of the blankness of primal time, that tentacled amorphous monster which was the lurker at the threshold, whose mask was as a congeries of iridescent globes, the noxious Yog-Sothoth, who froths as primal slime in nuclear chaos beyond the nethermost outposts of space and time."
Whoa.
Sounds gross.
Right?
Yeah, it kind of sounds like slimy. Blech.
With all
Not
those,
something I'd want in my living room.
how about in your sewer system?
No.
Because all of those iridescent globes of light sound an awful lot like the deadlights that the kids are having to fight against, right? And these monsters, these great old ones, they can. Some of them can take on different forms. They can shapeshift, just like it.
All right.
The great old ones, they're coming from beyond space and time. They're coming from other dimensions, breaking into this world to do their own thing, so when it is basically treating human beings like cattle for his consumption, he doesn't care about them. It seems very similar to Lovecraft's idea of these great old ones. And Stephen King has talked about how Lovecraft was intentionally a big influence on him. I mean, Lovecraft is a big influence on anybody writing horror today because he's an American writer. And hey, to get back to the Joker, you know where the Joker often breaks out of prison from, right?
Arkham?
Arkham Asylum.
All right.
Yeah, guess where the writers got the name Arkham from?
Lovecraft.
Lovecraft talks about that was the name of his town. He had a lot of his stories set in Arkham, Massachusetts, I think, Arkham, Maine, somewhere in New England.
Ugh,
Gotcha.
Poor Maine. They got to deal with Derry and Arkham.
Yeah, yeah. Derry's got a bad rap, doesn't it? It's got a tough time.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't want to be there. That I actually wrote down. Derry is effed on my notes while I was watching this film.
Well, I feel like if you have 250 or so settlers that just up and vanish, and then the next group you have this like cataclysmic event that wipes out a bunch of the population, why would you still want to move there?
And like Mike noticed that it came in a cycle of every 30 years. And that was one of the things I noticed when they were all adults. And he said, well, I never left. I can remember it. And he was telling these stories when they were younger, too. And nobody just put the connection together.
Well, and then they said that the adults are just kind of like turning a blind eye to everything. And I know that I'm just thinking of if we lived there in Derry, our father would probably be like, well, it's been almost 30 years. Who wants to go to Disneyland?
Yeah, you really get this sense. And they talk about this, don't they, about how Pennywise has some kind of psychological control over the town.
Exactly.
That this is his farm, basically, where he controls everything that happens there in one way or another. And so I think it's kind of maybe a dark commentary from King on the way that parents kind of ignore their children sometimes. But
Oh, that just
The
got deep.
opposite of helicopter parents.
yeah. Oh yeah, no, you're fine, kids. Just go play.
Rub some dirt on it.
Rub some. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm such
Pennywise
a bad camp
is-
counselor.
Pennywise is the ultimate rub some dirt on it. But what like you're saying, you got all of this evidence that bad stuff's going on. Why are you staying? That's why within 5 minutes of the movie starting, that scene with Georgie, like, come on, man, this is just survival of the fittest. That kid, as soon as something moved, if that had been me, as soon as I saw anything moving down there, it wouldn't even have had a chance to start talking to me. I would have
Over
already
a
been halfway down the
newspaper
block.
boat.
Well, yeah, who cares? Right? Exactly.
Make another one.
Go get your Curious George book and fix it. It's not that big a deal.
This kid makes Timmy from Jurassic Park looks like an Ivy League scholar.
Right? That's right. Man, and so there was, like, the worst part of me thought, oh, well, I don't really care that this kid's dead. I mean, yeah, it's sad, but at the same time, come on, man.
Yeah. I would probably, like, make me another one, please. You know?
It's in the sewer. Sorry.
Yeah. Why would you want it back if it was in the sewer anyway?
Why would you want the piece of paper that's,
Yeah.
soaked up all the sewer water? Yeah.
Well, it's coated in paraffin.
And we know that it will
course.
float, so.
Yeah. They all float.
But yeah, as
Down
soon as anything, whether it's a clown, whether it's my grandmother, I mean, if she's down in the sewer, I'm going to say, there's something
Fishy about
if
this.
you're not trying to get out. No. I'll call the police. It's
the only
fine.
thing that I think would be okay to see down there is like a Ninja Turtle.
Yeah.
Fair point. Yeah.
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 Or a pizza delivery guy.
Kids are dumb.
Kids are dumb. But they also they're the ones that have the edge on the monster, right? Because I
true.
liked that when the adults come back to fight the monster, they have a much harder time.
Oh, yeah.
At least at first, right? Because they have to remember how to have an
Remember how to
imagination
do it.
again.
And yeah, I mean,
Well, and I think it's really interesting how Mike was the only one that didn't leave, and he was the only one that kind of knew that this was going on. Everyone else had no idea, and he was like, well, let me... And everyone had their flashback when he called and said, it's back. And then, duh, and then they would have their flashback to their own personal
what
story.
did you say your name was? Yeah. And then, of course, Georgie's big brother, Billy, he was like, I had forgot that my brother was killed until just now. I'm like,
Yeah, you gotta wonder what he was thinking.
Yeah. I'm like,
about that.
Yeah.
Like, did he forget he had a brother at all, or?
right? That's what I was kind of wondering. I was like, okay, you remember that your brother died, but you don't remember how.
Oh yeah,
Because he was telling Audra, his wife, saying things like, do you remember that kid brother that I had that died? I just remembered he was murdered. You know, and his
Imagine
murder
being
was
a
Commercial
fast.
break.
Yeah, commercial break. I mean, you could do that with a miniseries.
Yeah. That's like one of the things I kept noticing watching. It was, oh, there was commercials there. Oh, I wonder if this is where the credits started.
Okay, so you're making me think of something. I'm gonna go off script for a minute. We got when you're talking about memory and forgetfulness, there's a philosopher who talks about this being really closely tied with our identity, and it is actually someone that we could talk about with this movie for other reasons. But it's Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche, the German kind of existentialist, kind of nihilist. People argue over exactly what he was. But he had a really awesome mustache. No one argues about that. Nietzsche is often remembered for some of his ideas about power. Actually, you can talk about the great old ones from Lovecraft or Pennywise through a Nietzschean lens really easy, because he's the one who talks about the death of God setting us, changing our culture. You know, there's this great quote from Thus Spoke Zarathustra about how God is dead, we have killed him, you and I. And Nietzsche took that kind of thing really seriously. He said, if God isn't real, then we need that's going to affect everything else that we think about the world. That's going to affect our views of morality. And he developed this whole system for an atheistic morality that basically says, if there are no other rules, if there's no rule giver to the universe, then if you're stronger, you're better, period. The strong win, and the strongest person gets to tell the weaker people what to do because they are objectively better creatures. And so to look at one of the great old ones like Cthulhu or Yog-Sothoth or Pennywise, why does Pennywise get to eat people? Because he's stronger. Nietzsche would say he is the better creature. He's better at surviving. He's better at living in this meaningless world, and so he gets to do whatever the heck he wants. Shut up. He's stronger. But Nietzsche, and this is what you just made me think of talking about memory, he talks about the role of forgetfulness in our development. Like as we grow as people, he actually thought that pain and forgetfulness was crucial for our development over time. He coins this really strange word, mnemotechnics, like a mnemonic device. Is the little memory tricks. Mnemotechnics is like the process of creating your memories.
Alrighty.
And he thought over time, he was a very he was a very optimistic man. He thought that pain was necessary to remember things. That the more pain you felt, and I'm simplifying, but as you would. The things that would shape you the most would be the things that affected you the most, and the things that affect you the most tend to be the things that hurt the most. So
Gotcha.
over time,
And you're not just talking about physical pain, but like
yeah,
any type of
absolutely, yeah,
Emotional, mental.
yeah.
I mean, physical pain can be good, but in the sense of being useful for Nietzsche's idea here. But yeah, any kind of pain. I mean, and I think it's worth remembering that a lot of those other kinds of mental pains often manifest with physical symptoms too: stomach aches, headaches, heartaches, those kinds of things. But for most people, we have to forget things. We deal with all sorts of horrible experiences in life. We are hurt, and Nietzsche says that we naturally want to forget these horrible things, and it's only through the social project of coming together as people and as cultures where we remind ourselves of the past. Otherwise, if it was just left to us, to ourselves, then we're going to kind of forget about the things that happened to us because we want to, because they're horrible. And so we have to kind of keep reminding ourselves of these pains. So it's this kind of weird tension where you need pain to remember stuff, but you don't want the pain, so you want to forget stuff. And so by constantly encoding things into our stories, he talks a lot about stories, and encoding things into our culture, which gets us back to Mike, bringing the band back together, reminding everybody about what happened when they were kids,
And then everybody going, oh, I remember now.
and all that pain comes flooding back in, and then sets them on their course for what happens next in the movie.
And that pain is too much for some of them. I mean,
Oh, man.
you have Richie, who's like, I don't know if I can go back, and he eventually does. But then you have Stan, who kills
Commits
himself
suicide.
rather than face
Stan
that
was the one in the bathtub.
Yeah.
face that fear again. So
I'm kind of surprised that Stan was the only one to make that choice after remembering all of the horrible stuff that happened to them as kids.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that it was a good choice or a right choice or a wrong choice. I don't know, but I was kind of surprised that he was the only one to do it.
yeah.
And it's not a surprising choice. Maybe I'll put it that way. After going through that kind of horrible trauma.
I was surprised that they just went. Like, yeah, okay, they made promises, but man, I know a lot of people that would just make a promise and be like, yeah, that was 30 years ago.
Yeah, screw you guys.
I'm going to go order a pizza.
I'm enjoying being in California and not being plagued by an evil demon monster.
Exactly.
Well, I do think that at least in one case it was beneficial and good timing, and that was Bev's case because she was in Beverly, excuse me, in an abusive relationship with her boyfriend, live-in boyfriend. I don't know if they were more than that. But that was when she kind of like got the moxie to tell him, "No, I'm leaving. Bye," and then that's when you find out that, remember, oh yeah, she has really good aim because she threw that candle and hit him right in the forehead.
Yeah.
But I think that at least in that case, it was slightly beneficial. And then there was, all the trauma that happened after that with going back into the sewers and seeing dead lights and a giant weird spider thingy. Also, can I bring up something that just popped into my head?
Yeah.
What was with like the Munchkin door?
That's what I was. Yeah.
I saw that and I was thinking, okay.
Yeah, it just kind of comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, like I don't think it was necessarily needed. Or
Yeah. It was
wanted.
kind of on the nose that it was the beast's lair with all the human bones around it too. You know, I feel like I've seen that door in so many different like movies. Like, oh, it must be behind that tiny door.
And like you don't even realize that the door is like that tiny until they walk through it and you go, oh,
They're
okay.
crawling.
Yeah, for a monster that can shapeshift at will, it seems kind of. I mean, if he can fit through that drain, he can.
Yeah, who
might
would?
have the- I don't know.
Why would they have an actual little tiny door? You know?
Unless it's all part of the plot to lure the kids in. I mean, it works. They go through the door, right?
Yeah, I'm sure that the the skeletons and bones and stuff like that, though,
Yeah, that's true.
might be kind of a deterrent for kids.
You guys mentioned the killer clown epidemic earlier.
Yeah,
Let's talk about that for a bit. That was a weird thing.
yeah, that was really strange.
I mean, for a couple of months, you had
Just clowns everywhere.
clowns,
All the places.
sightings. Well,
Didn't it start in like West Virginia or something?
it was somewhere
somewhere
in
around
the
there. I've
east.
got I have a timeline in front of me of like the very first
Sightings.
kind of sightings and
There were way more rumors than
Yeah.
there were actual sightings.
Yeah, I think it was a little
Way more fear.
sensationalized.
That's a
Is
good
that a word?
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
definitely
okay.
a good word for that.
So there's a creepy clown craze, is what some people were calling it. There's names from a bunch of other people.
Bizarre States have their clown corner.
Yeah,
10 out of
that's
10 would
really,
recommend.
really awesome. It goes like 10th of August, 2016, I think, was one of the big ones. There was clowns intimidating kids in Ottawa, Canada, and the police were actually called, and nobody was arrested or anything like that. But that was, I think, the first real sighting of what they were calling killer clowns, you know.
Yeah, and that kind of kicked off this frenzy of other copycat people going out and scaring folks. I mean, a lot of it was just being creepy, right? They weren't really... Although there was at least one attack where people actually were
Yeah,
injured.
Yeah.
and there was that thing where
But most of it wasn't.
one of the little kids brought a knife to school because they had to walk to school and they were terrified that they were going to... that there was
that's...
a
Well,
clown
yeah.
that was going to come
Yeah, you get
take
kind of
them and
these,
stuff.
like, counter... these attempts to try and counteract the insanity by other... Not
Acts of
much less
insanity.
insane acts.
Yeah, I mean, and then it influenced a lot of other actions also. I mean, McDonald's even limited the appearances of Ronald McDonald. And,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because they were like, well, we don't want people beating the crap out of our mascot.
Yeah.
And then there was these masked vigilantes, including one guy dressed up as Batman, who said
boy.
that he would fight any clowns that he saw, you know, as he was a protector of the public and so on. And he was made these vows on the internet and so on.
Well, yeah, you know, there's this haunted house not too far from where we're recording this
Oh, yeah, yeah.
podcast. That's pretty well known in the area. It's large. People come from all over the place to go to the haunted mansions, and I had at least one student in my high school class last year who was working up at the haunted mansions as a clown. That's what he really loved to do. He would play different roles in the haunted house, but he said that at the height of all of that, because it extended through August into September and October around Halloween.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't until after Halloween that it really slowed down.
Right.
Yeah.
The management at the haunted house was telling them, you need to take don't put your makeup on before you come here. Wait, you need to take it all off before you drive, because if people see you in your clown makeup driving through town, they're going to call the cops. I mean, and
That happened to a friend of mine last year, yeah.
There were concerns about that. People seeing things.
Oh, yeah.
And
In fact, the Metropolitan Police advised children to call 999 if they ever spotted a scary clown. So, I mean...
there were stories about clowns like luring kids into the woods out of
Yeah.
schools, and I mean, it's just really disturbing.
Insert
There's a
into the
movie
woods
actually.
joke here.
There's a movie coming out, kind of based on this idea. A found footage film called Behind the Sightings that is wrapping up production. I think I don't know when. I don't know if they have a release date yet.
Probably around Halloween.
But that would make sense, wouldn't it? But yeah, it's kind of if I understand the concept right, it's taking what everybody was afraid was going to happen during the height of the killer clown craze and making a movie about what if that actually happened. Because nothing really happened. I mean, with a couple of notable exceptions, there wasn't really anybody who got hurt, but that's what this movie is going to explore.
Well, and a lot
I
of
don't
people,
think I'm going to be seeing that movie.
Probably not.
a lot of people actually, since the remake of It is coming out, they were thinking, oh, maybe this is just some sort of what's the word, PR?
Marketing.
Yeah, kind of like a
yeah.
marketing ploy.
Yeah.
To get people more interested in the new movie It coming out.
Makes sense. I don't think it has anything to do with
I
that.
don't think it does either. And they actually, didn't they come out and say, yeah, we didn't do any of this.
In fact,
It's
it
not
was
ours."
September 29th, 2016, New Line Cinema issued like this big thing saying, hey, we have nothing to do with this. You're on your own, you know.
But at the same time, thank you for all the free publicity.
Exactly.
Do you have more on the timeline?
It goes on, and it's just like little snippets. You know, you have Chief Superintendent of Police says Force alone had to deal with 14 reports in 24 hours. Wow. It's and this is where you start seeing that it could be just like people calling it in, but not actually seeing it, because I can't imagine 14 separate reports in different places, you know, of just all these clowns coming out of the woodwork. There's got to be more to it. I think people were just kind of like seeing that was in the news, and it just kind of took it from there.
They want to jump on the
creepy clown bandwagon.
I want to be a part of this too.
I wonder how many clowns you can get into that bandwagon. Well, somebody had to say it.
It's easier if you start ripping people's arms off.
Ouch.
So I have a question that kind of goes along with this. Do you think that in pop culture, how it kind of runs in cycles, do you think that clowns are up next in like the creepy horror side of it? Kind of zombies are maybe going a little bit out and clowns are coming in?
You know, that's a good question.
Because we've been through this whole zombie craze, I guess you could call it, with World War Z, The Walking Dead, all of these different...
Yeah, they're still around, but they are kind of fading.
They're going away a little bit.
Popularity.
And clowns might be taking over again. Maybe it runs in a cycle. I don't know.
I think you're definitely
cycle.
Right about cycles. You're definitely right about that. And I mean, time will tell, but I could believe it because clowns are different enough from zombies.
Yeah.
Zombie clowns.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's that too. Yeah.
Then
That's
we
for
can
the
always
transition
go
period.
into killer clowns from outer space. It's like, anybody want to remake that one? I hope not, because that was actually really great.
I want scary aliens again. That's
Scary alien.
I think
yeah.
that was the
more
thing.
scary
It was
aliens.
aliens and then zombies and now clowns.
Yeah, they kind of skipped the vampire sequence because they made them all pretty and sparkly. But
Yeah, that kind of ruined it. But
yeah,
oh well. For another day on vampires.
Maybe.
and we do. I mean, there have been other. Well, I guess not so much clowns because I mean, we do think of it as a clown.
Even though it's not really a clown.
Even though it's not really a clown, right? It's like this weird evil force, this malevolent alien demon thing. And I think of there are other things that we've already seen in pop culture, kind of like that, which are sometimes even more watered down. I'm thinking of Harry Potter.
Yeah,
the Boggarts, right? I mean, Pennywise is like the gigantic, super big brother that every Boggart wishes it could be. The whole idea of turning into the worst fear of the person who is seeing it. They just need
Exactly.
They need a spell. What was that? I forget the Boggart spell, the anti-Boggart spell, where they make it look silly.
Yeah.
Stephen King has them melt their face with battery acid, but I don't know what spell Harry Potter would cast to make that happen.
I don't know. We need Julie in here. She would know right off the top of her head.
That's right.
Yeah, definitely. So we have, all the clown corner. We have the creepy clown craze, whatever you want to call it. I kind of like the idea of the dichotomy of the story. You know, I have your version with the kids than 30 years later as adults. Mm-hmm. You know, it makes me think of a few other really popular shows that are tapping into that 80s kids adventure horror story. You want to say it?
Are you talking about Stranger Things?
I'm talking about Stranger Things.
It's such a good show.
I mean, you have all these kids that are teaming up together to fight the Gorgon.
That's right. The Demogorgon is
So,
not. I don't know. Demogorgon, I think, looks scarier than Pennywise.
oh yeah, definitely. But I mean,
Pennywise might be scarier as a concept.
I feel like it's like kind of the same type of thing, though. All these kids
Yeah.
get together. And
Yeah,
boom.
definitely.
Instead of killing it with battery acid, Elle just kind of
Melts its brain.
melts its brain.
If you haven't seen Stranger Things, you need to get on that. That stuff's fantastic.
Sorry.
And there's a new season coming out in
It looks awesome.
just a couple
Okay,
weeks.
here's the thing. I think it sounds like a great concept. It sounds like something fun to watch. I just kind of want to wait until people shut up about it a little bit because it
Fair enough.
hasn't stopped.
Fair enough. Because it's so good. And it's only going to get stronger when the new season comes out.
Oh, yeah.
It's coming out on Halloween.
I missed my chance.
But if you
Darn
liked it, I think, Stranger Things would be a great next thing to watch because, especially if you like the first part of it, which I think is the better part. You're going to get a lot of the same vibe. They really tried to capture that mid-'80s feel,
Yeah, definitely.
which it couldn't help but capture because it was made in the
In 1990. Yeah, we're coming up on the end of the hour, and I've got one more question for Anthony.
Oh dear God.
Yes.
How do you think John McClane would have dealt with Pennywise?
Well, he would have said a lot of naughty words.
Maybe then I would have been more interested.
Would John McClane have? What would John McClane have seen?
I don't know. He's not really scared of anything,
He's not
is
really
he?
scared. He probably would have seen himself with a wedding ring.
Oh, terrifying. Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to see that. What would I don't know if he
It's like celebrity death match. John McClane, Pennywise.
and Pennywise. I think that Pennywise might. John McClane would. He's not afraid of anything.
Yeah.
So he's going to be able to.
It's kind of what I was thinking. I was like,
But
that's
especially
an
if-
interesting question.
If all you have to do to kill the spider is just rip its entrails out, he can definitely handle that.
Yeah.
That's
Ho,
true.
ho, ho. Now I have a machine gun.
Man, he'll just drop a. I mean, by the time you get to like movies 4 and 5, he's dropping bridges onto people. So
Yeah.
I
Well-
think he can handle one killer clown.
I had a quick thought, though. Did anybody else kind of wonder why the adults didn't bring a gun or anything like that?
No, because
But they
these are
mentioned
the dumbest
it in
kids
the
the world. We established that in the opening scene.
Because I was like, okay, we have earrings and a slingshot still,
Yeah,
but you have access to an arsenal.
that's right. You
Yeah.
you are.
I was thinking the exact same thing. And someone actually said it like,
Yeah.
wait, we don't have guns? I have my slingshot. Oh, great.
Yeah.
That'll get
Little-
so
little
far.
late. Too little, too late. But it worked. They only had to sacrifice like 2 or 3 more of their friends.
Poor Eddie.
Yeah.
So, would you change anything about the movie or about the
Um,
miniseries?
the acting. The acting was really something else.
It was cringe.
There's a few, good characters, but for the most part, it was a little rough.
I'm excited to see. There is something about the new one that I think could do really well. They've got some. Actually, at least one. I think one of the kids from Stranger Things is actually in.
Oh,
the
really?
new It. Yeah, I think the main kid.
Oh, okay.
I think. I don't know. I'm not sure, but it looks like they're trying to. Certainly, the technical effects and the special effects are going to be better. But I think as far as the story goes, having them arm themselves appropriately before they go to fight the monster, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I don't know, just
I think that I understand why they had to cut out some of the larger Stephen King mythos just for time. But I mean, by the end of the book, it gets crazy. There's like a cosmic turtle that shows up. Basically, like there's Pennywise is the evil version, and there's like this good version of the cosmic entities out there that shows up to like fight Pennywise or something, or talk to the kids. I mean, I don't know. It's very different than the book or than the movie.
Huh.
And it would be nice if there was more, especially since the Dark Tower movie just came out. I don't think there's any plans for them to tie those movies together like all these other cinematic universes that are all the rage right now.
Stephen King universe. That sounds wonderful.
But that could be, I don't know. I mean, it
would be
fun.
cool, yeah.
It could be fun if they would have to do more, like redo The Stand and I'm trying to think of what other. Salem's Lot would be another one that kind of ties into a lot of these different.
Where do the Langoliers fit into that?
Love the Langoliers. I don't think it has anything to do with it.
Oh, that's a bummer.
I could be
That's a
wrong.
great one.
Well, the Dark Tower series basically has the idea that all fictional stories are real in some sense. They're just all in these different dimensions. So they're in there somewhere. I just don't know if it plays into the story at all.
Gotcha. Well, anything else that we would change?
Forget all of the clowns forever and just go play in a... I just want to go watch Die Hard again.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know. I can't think of anything I would want to change, but I also don't really want to watch it again. So
Yeah, that was a lot. That was...
I was waiting for you to say, who would you recommend it to? And I'd just say, just don't.
You wouldn't recommend it to anybody?
I
like
feel,
maybe, but
I feel
it would
if
have to
you-
come down to specific people
Yeah.
Yeah.
that I know.
I think there are scenes that are worth... Like, there are good scenes. Some
As
of the
a
library
whole.
scenes are kind of funny, but...
As a whole.
Yeah.
Actually, if there was one thing I could change, I would try to make it look a little bit creepier. I felt like there was just too much sunshine,
Yes.
especially for it being Maine,
Especially for it to be raining that much
and still have sun
and
everywhere.
still have sun shining through all the rain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which
That would
I
be
think
what I'd
it sounds
change.
like they've addressed in the new one. So
That's
Just
good.
looking at the trailer, it looks...
I
looks
kind of want to
creepy.
go see the new one now,
I'm not
but
going to. I'll tell you right now.
at the same time, I'm kind of just,
I have no desire to
I'll stay at
embarrass
home.
myself in the movie theater like that.
But I think since I already know the story going in, I would feel better about it. I'm one of those people that like Googles how the rest of the movie's going to play out while I'm watching it.
While you're in the theater.
Not while I'm in the theater, because I'm classy. When I'm at home, no idea.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I think that's it. Thanks for joining us today on the Story Cauldron. The music for this episode is from the band Hook Sounds.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Search for Story Cauldron and The Story Cauldron. And let us know what you think. Tell us if we're crazy about it. Is this the greatest horror movie that's ever been made? Should everybody you know watch this? Have we gotten something totally wrong? Correct us. Let us know what you think.
And don't forget to go check out our website, www.thestorykauldron with .com. Go and check that out. We have all of our info up on there. And don't forget to go and leave us a review on iTunes. That's how other people can help find our podcast and share it with the world. Maybe they'll find something interesting.
And also it makes us feel all warm and fuzzy that you care. And until next time, bye.
Bye.